you know how much I want you to have order in your life. It's one of the main pillars of having a lifestyle of faith, order, and influence. And the kind of order that I want to talk about today, which this is an order episode. But one of the things that I want to share with you today and talking about order is how to have an absence of chaos and overwhelm in your life. And I want you to do this one thing. I want you to think about what is your one main source of overwhelm in your life. I want you to take that out. I want you to look at it, make an assessment, and I want you to get really resourceful. I talked about that in last week's episodes about how to be resourceful. I want you to do some benchmarking. I want you to do some investigation, some research. I want you to talk to people, call a friend, whatever it is. I want you to take whatever that thing is that is your source of overwhelm. And I want you to begin to think about how can you attack this thing and whip it into shape. Now, maybe it's not even possible. Now, I'm going to share with you a story about me. So, I had taken this job in corporate America, and it was an awesome job. It was actually a promotional opportunity for me, becoming a director of human resources for this huge conglomerate. And I was in this great division, and I had 20, there were 20 different facilities in our division. And then I had direct responsibility for 10, anywhere from 9 to 11 of those other facilities. Some were really, really small, some were not so small, and they had no human resource professionals located at these sites. And so, in essence, in addition to being a director of human resources, and then, oh, by the way, we couldn't get the director of safety approved, because one thing you should pay attention to is if your job description says that there is tightly managed headcount, that probably means you're never going to have the true resources of people that you need to do this job. But at any rate, so I'm doing, director of human resources. Okay, director of safety too. And then I have all these sites with no HR professionals. So in essence, sometimes they're generalists, sometimes they're manager. Well, you can imagine it was a lot. And up front, I was told it's going to be a lot. And if I knew now what I knew then, would I still take that job? Yes. Yes, I would. I loved that job. I loved everything that I got to do. I loved the company. I loved the people. I loved the people that I reported to. But the truth of it is, it was too much. It was too much for any one person to do. I was basically spending, you know, my whole day as a call center to all of these sites that did not have an HR professional on site. And then at night, I would have to do my workload. So I was like reporting to work at 8 a.m. I'd work through my lunch. And then like at 5 or 5:30, I would stop for dinner. And, if I'm at home, I would visit my father. And so by 7 or 7:30, I would get back to work of doing the actual things that I needed to be doing. And I might work until midnight or after. And if there were special projects or special initiatives going on at that time, like if I were in the middle of doing bonus spreadsheets or performance reviews, that, there was something big going on in addition to that, I might stay up, no kidding, till 3 or 4 in the morning. So I am constantly working all of these hours. And it was a big job, no doubt. I remember I went for my psych evaluation before they hired me. And I remember that the report came back and they basically said, she'll do fine because she's a workhorse. And I wore that badge proudly into my new job. And, it's fine. It's fine if you're like, you've got special projects that you're having to, this is a season and you're having to do a lot of work and do the heavy lift. Um, but you cannot sustain that kind of work life, you know, on an ongoing basis. So within 3 years, I was done. I was I've done all I could do. But in the meantime, when I'm like, I had this huge job and it's the scope, right? It's the scope of this job was just so big. Even though I loved everything about it, it was too big for me. And I remember, and this is what I want to encourage you to do. If you've got this thing that is so overwhelming, I want you to really make valiant efforts to really get it under control, to really figure out how can you rein it in and make it doable. And that's what I would do. I would look at it and I would go, okay, this is my new plan of attack. And I would incorporate the things and I would really, just make again this valiant effort to make it work. And, in a short period of time, it just would still fall apart. Things are falling off my plate. It was too much. There were errors. I'm making errors. I had a lot of great success stories too. I was making some great strides in some areas, but still not the quality of work that I wanted to do because I couldn't even think straight most of the time. Most of the time during the day, I was like a call center and I'm taking all these calls. And then at night, I'm really, trying to keep up because I was living deadline to deadline. But I would come up with my strategy. I would work to incorporate that strategy, but in a matter of time, it just would become apparent that it wasn't working. And you've heard this phrase, and I'm going to actually turn it into a maxim for you, a short, pithy statement that you can recall in times of trouble. But this maxim, this phrase you've heard before, it's mostly in relation to relationships, where it says, it's not you, it's me. Well, flip that around because what I would do is I would try to attack this thing. And when it was falling apart, I would have to realize, okay, it is not me. Because I knew what I brought to the table. I knew my success stories in the past. I knew that I typically could work circles around most other people. And I'd been successful. And so I would have to just tell myself, okay, it's not me, it is you. And the you was not really a person. It was like you, the scope of this job, this monster job that I have. And so I would limp along a little bit and then I would, because I like to be resourceful, I like to benchmark, I like to try to figure out what's the next thing that I can do. And I would, come up with another idea, another plan of attack. And I would try to put everything into place. And in a short period of time, I would have to realize it's not going to work. And I would basically have to say, it is not me, it is you. It is the scope of this job. So think about whatever it is that you have going on. And sometimes it can be a relationship. Sometimes it can be a monster thing, situation that you're constantly having to deal with. Figure out how you can attack it. And hopefully you can rein it in. But if you can't, don't beat yourself up. Just you have to sometimes realize it's not me, it's you. It's whatever this is. And so if you make a few, and I want you to make a few attempts, and only you can decide the time frame for that. And again, your next attempt may be when you get the next new idea, but spend time always trying to figure out or be open to learning new ways that you can attack this thing, this source of overwhelm. And again, I had another plan and I was always regrouping, reorganizing. Okay, let me try this. Let me do it this way. And I would come back and I would put in my plan of attack. And in a short period of time, I could figure out it's not going to work. And I'd be like, but still, it is not me. It is you. It is this massive, massive scope and work responsibilities. And honestly, I would have continued to do that probably over and over again until my husband finally stepped in and said, this is madness, and you're going to have to give them your job back. Thank you, but thank you no more because it's not going to work for you. And, before the pandemic, my husband and I, we both are professionals and we traveled full time on business, almost road warrior status. And with the pandemic, and we worked at home together. He was downstairs in his office. I'm upstairs in my office. And for 6 months, he really got to see, because we both work a lot and we both are workaholics. I mean, I am a workaholic. I'm trying to be a recovering workaholic. And we're doing all the things, but he could definitely tell that what I was doing was not sustainable and it was wearing and tearing on my nerves, on my emotions, on my mental state. And I remember, I had these moments where I'd just break down, if something went wrong and if I let something fall off my plate and I would just crash and burn and I'd have these meltdowns. And he would be trying to pick me back up and encourage me. And I remember there was a Sunday and my elder daughter wanted me to come and do things with my grandkids, and I couldn't and I was constantly saying, I can't. I've got to get to work. Because I live deadline to deadline. On Sundays I couldn't even have a Sabbath because I had to be ready for the next work day and start off a whole new week. And I remember just breaking down and crying. And my husband was like, excuse me for all this with my throat. It's where I had strep through the Christmas holiday and I was sicker than a dog and I haven't quite recovered from it. But my husband was like, okay, you've done all that you can do here. And again, I had to say, okay, it's not me. It is you. It is the scope of this job and the depth and the breadth of the responsibilities. And when I was thinking about sharing this with you, where I wanted you to kind of take this new maxim of saying, to be able to, when things aren't working out and you're doing all that you can do, you're making, noble efforts, you have to be able to go, okay, it is not me, because you know what you've brought to the table. Like even in the a recent planning session, I think it might be episode 43. I was like, make a list of everything that you know that you do really well, so that when you're hit with a new initiative, that you're not sideblinded and just overwhelmed, but that you actually go back to those things that you know is true about you and how you work and what's been your strengths, and go back to those things and start employing those things. And I want you to do all of that. But sometimes I want you to also know that things cannot be reined in. That source of overwhelm is not going to change. And you have to realize it's not you. It's not that you are lacking. It's not that you're not good enough or that you're not smart enough or you're not equipped enough. Sometimes something can be just so impossible that it's just not serving you well any longer. It's not for you anymore. And that's where we had gotten with my job. And my husband actually made the call for me. And I hated it because I hated to leave that job, but it was the right decision for me and my mental health at that particular time. So this reminds me in Deuteronomy chapter 1, you know, after Moses has taken all the children that were enslaved, the Hebrew children that were enslaved in Egypt, he's brought them through the wilderness. And you can read through Exodus and Numbers, in Leviticus, all the different things that they had went through. And finally, they have been stationed for quite some time at Mount Horeb. And this is called a period of organization. The commentaries, and I love this because it's so in line with what I'm trying to tell you. They were in a period of organization. They were getting the 10 Commandments. They were getting formalized and situated in a way that he was about to take them out to the promised land. And so it's called a period of organization when they're encamped at the bottom of Mount Horeb. But I remember many years ago, I was in a very difficult situation. I didn't know how I was ever going to get out of the mess that I was in. And I remember the Lord began to do some things. I mean, he really began to interject himself in that situation and I could tell the Lord was going to set me free, but I would have moments where I would be afraid that, we might go backward. It might not come to pass. And I remember when I was just doing my regular reading of the Word of God, and I encourage you to do that because even in the job that I was in that was so overwhelming, when I was always regrouping, when I was in all my periods of organization and trying to get a handle on this thing, reading the Word of God consistently, the Lord continued to encourage me during that time and to refreshen me and to strengthen me in that journey that I was in at that particular time. But the Lord says in Deuteronomy 1:6, and again, this just bubbled up in my spirit. The Lord said to me through his word, this is what Deuteronomy 1:6 says. It says, you have dwelt long enough at this mountain. Turn and take your journey. And I knew that the Lord was saying, you have done all you can do right here. There's nothing more here for you. It's time to leave this place and take a different journey. I'm going to set you on a different path. And just like when I was so overwhelmed and I kept regrouping and I was in my periods of organization and it wouldn't come to pass, and I was trying to tell myself, okay, it's not you, it's not me, it is you, it is you, it is this job. It's crazy. It was like my husband was speaking this to me at some point where he was like, Gina, you've done all you can do. There's nothing else you can do here. You've got to leave this place and do something else. And I just want to leave that with you today. I want to let that sit with you for a moment. Yes, I want you to make valiant and noble attempts to do the best that you can do with if it's a situation, if it's your workload, if it is a relationship. And I'm not really talking about, you can't leave your kids. Don't be overwhelmed with your kids and we can't shuffle them off. And I'm not even really talking about leaving a marriage. I'm talking about sometimes you can be in a relationship though with other people who are difficult and who are taxing, and you're doing everything you can do honestly to make that situation or that relationship work, and make those attempts, make those honest efforts. And remember that if it does not work out, it is not you. It's not you. It's that thing. And sometimes as just putting in, specific boundaries for ourselves, you got to release that thing. For me, I had to give that job back. And I hated to do that because I loved it so much. But at the end of the day, that job did not love me back. It no longer it was not serving me well. It was not for my best interest at that point, and I had to give it back. And sometimes there's relationships and situations you just have to walk away from. And for me, that's what I really felt like the Lord was saying to me in that moment. And I wonder if he's saying the same thing to you. You have dwelt long enough at this mountain. Turn and take your new journey.